As our country has faced its most recent reckoning with racial and social inequality in our country, it's reminded us that while Black people are not a monolith, the Black experience in our country shares lots of common threads. Candace Head is an author and spoken word artist who recently put pen to paper and published a book of spoken words speaking to the shared experience of Black women in our country. In honor of Black History Month, she's here to perform one of her pieces called The Interruption.
Blackness is the interruption you cannot ignore. My Blackness invades my thoughts, pierces through my perspective, and molds my expectation of self. It expands my understanding. It's the reason I'm still standing, and it beautifully brands me like you try to. It never conforms to bland norms. It shines through the cracks and keyholes of your closed doors. It gave birth to everything you claim is yours. It pours out of your red line ghettos, spreads far beyond the pages of history you limit it to, and it built your perfectly crafted landscapes. See, Blackness doesn't care what you thought this was. It's here to tell you what it is, because we too are America, waiting in the kitchen when company comes, laughing, eating well, and growing stronger. You can't duplicate it, imitate it, or replicate it, but you try to. And what you try to obliterate always comes back with a momentum you now try to recreate, because Blackness is that interruption you cannot ignore. So stop trying, because Blackness is just as powerful as the light, speaks just as clear, speaks just as loudly, and just like light, Blackness shines. But then again, we all appreciate things in time.
Okay, so Candace, I have to talk to you about the story behind The Interruption. It made me smile while I'm also feeling emotional. I can't really explain how I feel, so talk to me about what The Interruption means.
I got the inspiration from it in a really, really weird place. I was actually in a Smithsonian art museum, and I was taking a class on Alexander Calder. And so DC has this really cool series where they bring poets into museums and we write pieces to the actual art. And everybody was writing about these magnificent sculptors of this legendary artist, Calder. And they said, go around in the room and pick one thing and write about it. I noticed there was one element that I was immediately drawn to that nobody else saw. And it was this wire structure of Josephine Baker. And I thought, how beautiful is this? And it also was tying to a lot of events that were happening in our moment in history, and just like, we will not be ignored. You cannot ignore, you cannot not see us. We are a part of America. We are ingrained in this culture. We built this culture. I just remember walking through the streets of Amsterdam and hearing J. Cole and hearing Stevie Wonder and hearing the jazz that I heard my mom singing as a young kid. And we are what makes this country great. So I think that's what the inspiration was behind that piece.
And the book you wrote, it's about the experience of Black women. Why did you feel it was necessary to write a book about that specifically? Because you're a very knowledgeable person about a lot of things, but why write about that experience?
As a writer, I think it's important to read the book that you would write, and also write the book that you would read. And so when I was conceptualizing what I wanted to bring forth into the world, I went within myself and found what means the most to me. Like, what makes me proud? What journey have I gone through? The longest, what journey have I gone through that has made me stronger and more intimate with myself? And I realized it was that reckoning with what it means to be a Black woman. I grew up reading the works of Black authors and poets. Dr. Maya Angelou was the reason I am a poet today. My mom placed a book form of Phenomenal Woman in my hands when I was 11 years old. And at the time, I thought it was so beautiful that I couldn't put it down. And I thought it was so beautiful that my heart couldn't go without it. Like, so I memorized it and I continue to memorize more of her work. And the beautiful thing that happens when you read enough poetry, you become a poet yourself. And so it makes sense that my debut collection of poetry is an homage to Black womanhood, because it was Black women and authors who raised me and who gave me the key to unlock who I am.
Wow. Candace, thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's very interesting. I obviously know you, but just through poetry, it connects so many of us because you feel like perfect strangers understand you, and that's what I love about it. So Candace is going to join us every week this Black History Month to perform new pieces as we honor Black history and how that history still impacts us today. We'll be right back.